Today, I would like to talk about bodybuilding and make a little bit of a comparison between natural bodybuilding and enhanced bodybuilding. First of all, I'd like to address the hobbyists. So people like me who simply do bodybuilding for their own personal reasons in order to look better, in order to be healthier, but they don't have any interest in actually getting on stage and competing against other people. I think for them, it is very obvious they should not take into consideration the way that professional enhanced bodybuilders train, eat, or live their lives in any way. I think the two are not comparable whatsoever. I think they're completely different sports. I mean, they're similar sports, as in they have similar goals, but they are completely different universes. I mean, you could sort of think about it like American football and rugby. You know, they both have sort of an egg-shaped ball and they're both sort of ramming into each other and, you know, trying to get the ball from one side of the field to the other. But they're still very different sports. They have different strategies and tactics. You know, one of them is using helmets and shoulder pads and they're bashing into each other much harder, and the others are not using that stuff. So I think you can kind of make that comparison between enhanced bodybuilding and natural bodybuilding. So if you're just doing natural bodybuilding as a hobby, completely ignore what the professional enhanced bodybuilders are doing, because none of that stuff is going to work for you. The way they diet, the way they train, all of that is just completely on the ignore list for a hobbyist natural bodybuilder. Now, here's the thing, and the sort of the more controversial part of this discussion is competitive natural bodybuilding, which is also a thing. There are naturals who compete, get on stage, and try to, you know, win against other naturals. But the thing is with these competitions is they just totally imitate the enhanced professional bodybuilding, because enhanced professional bodybuilding, you know, the Mr. Olympia and all that stuff. We're talking about Big Ramy and Chris Bumstead and these kinds of people. You know, that's where the spotlight is, right? When people think about bodybuilding, that's what they think about, you know, these giant guys that are on steroids. But when you're talking about natural bodybuilding on a competition format, on a stage, that sport very closely tries to imitate what professional bodybuilding is doing in terms of the conditioning, in terms of what sort of body fat percentage the people show up in. So you have people in professional bodybuilding showing up on stage at 5 or 6% body fat, but you also have people in natural bodybuilding showing up on stage at 5 to 6% body fat. And maybe this is the more controversial part of my discussion, and maybe I'm sort of speaking out of my depth here, since I'm not a competitive natural bodybuilder. I have no intention of getting on a stage and competing against other people, so who am I to judge people who do that? But personally, I think it's a bit ridiculous that these natural competitions try to follow the format that the enhanced competitions follow. It makes no sense. And here's a couple reasons why. So the main thing I would say is the dieting and the shreds. So getting down to, you know, single digit body fat, even like, you know, 5-6% body fat, because this is something which a natural is totally able to do. It is within, you know, just getting down to that 5-6% body fat. A natural person can do that. They can do it just as much as a enhanced person can. You know, just because you're not taking steroids doesn't mean you can't cut fat off of your body. You can totally do that. But here's the problem. You end up being tiny, like really small. And there's a really good video about this by Nick Strength and Powers, a guy who makes these videos about professional bodybuilding, but he actually competed as a natural bodybuilder himself. And he made a very good video. I think it was called The Truth About Natural Bodybuilding. I recommend you go watch that. I'll link it down below if I remember to do it. And he talks about how small you have to get to actually show up shredded as a natural on stage. So if I remember correctly from his video, he said he was doing some powerlifting and he got really big and he bulked up to like 220 pounds. He's a really big guy, right? Obviously he wasn't lean because he was powerlifting, but he thought since he was so big, he was just gonna have to cut down, you know, maybe to 190 or 180 and he's gonna be shredded, right? But that wasn't the case because he's natural, and as you're cutting down, you're also not just cutting a lot of your fat, but you're also cutting a lot of your muscle, especially once you want to get down to those single-digit body fats. So he actually ended up showing up on stage at like 140 something pounds, like 145 pounds, which is like 65 kilos, right? He was absolutely tiny. And we're talking about a guy who had been training at that point for like a decade. Like, just think about this. You're training for a decade and your stage weight is like what a woman weighs, you know, 65 kilos. Like, that is rough. And if you look at these natural bodybuilders, they're all small. They're very small, but it doesn't have to be like that. The only reason they're small is because the natural bodybuilding format is copying the enhanced bodybuilding format. They're trying to get the same level of body fat, which is an achievable thing, but they can't hang on to their muscle. They just can't do it. The enhanced bodybuilders, the guys who are injecting themselves every day with anabolic steroids, they can hang on to a ridiculous amount of mass because their hormones just stay at this like superhuman level, even when they're, you know, single digit, absolutely peeled to the bone. They have no fat on their body whatsoever. And even then, they have superhuman levels of testosterone because they're injecting it into their asses every day, right? When you're a natural and you get down to this absolutely peeled single-digit body fat, your hormone profile is going to go to shit. And you're going to feel like shit and you're going to lose all your muscle. And it's horrendous. Like, why would you do this to yourself, you know? I have to say, massive respect to the naturals to do this. It's incredibly hard. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. It is incredibly hard, both mentally and physically, what you put your body through to get yourself to look like that and get on stage looking like that is incredibly difficult, and massive respect to those guys for doing that. But I think it's just nonsensical that this is what we make the standard. Just because the enhanced guys who are injecting themselves with drugs every day are doing it like this doesn't mean that the naturals should also do it like this. And I think if you look at these old school guys, I made a couple videos about them. If you go on the Natty Talk playlist on my channel, I made one about Marvin Eder and I made one about Steve Reeves. And if you look at these guys, they were big guys. I mean, they were like, you know, nearly 200 pounds, both of them. And they weren't that lean. They were maybe like 10% body fat. But I mean, come on, look at these guys who achieved this like 70 years ago, right? Look at these guys and compare them to the guys who are natural showing up on stage and doing bodybuilding today as a natural. There's just no comparison. These old school guys look way more impressive. But it's not because they're, you know, they were inherently better than the guys who are competing today. It's because they're just not they weren't trying to get so ridiculously shredded. They stayed around 10% body fat. Maybe they went down to 9%, or maybe they were at 11%. But at no point were they at 6% body fat weighing 140 pounds, right? So a natural can have a very big, very impressive, very aesthetic physique around, you could be weighing 90 kilos, 200 pounds, right? You can be a big boy. Even with a shirt on, you can look big and impressive, but you're gonna have to be around, you know, 9 to 10, 11, 12% body fat. That's it. You can't go down to 5% body fat as a natural without incredible suffering and incredible muscle loss. So how do you even keep improving, you know, over 10 years or 15 years if you're constantly getting yourself down to this 5% shredded look to get yourself on stage as a natural, losing all your muscle and then having to rebuild it again before the next show and hope you can get to the next show a little bit bigger than you looked before, you know, by the time you strip all the fat off again. It's just a horrible cycle. And I don't think it's something that naturals need to partake in. Let that whole shreds, giant look, keep that for the professionals on steroids. You know, let them do their thing and just think about what we do as a completely different sport. There's no money in natural bodybuilding anyway. If you're a natural bodybuilder, you get on stage, you're not going to make a lot of money off of that. So I wish there could be sort of like a paradigm shift in natural bodybuilding, and the people that go on stage, they could maybe show up between 9 and 11% body fat and actually be big guys. You know, obviously you won't see the granularity in their muscles so much. Maybe they won't be as vascular, but they'll be big, they'll be impressive. They'll look like Steve Reeves used to look, you know? They'll look like Marvin Eder, you know, these old school guys who you look at them and you think, wow. But like when I look at a natural bodybuilder on stage in 2022, I think, wow, that guy must have gone through hell and back on his diet. But I don't think, man, I want to look like that guy. I don't. I'm sorry. I just don't want to look like that. That is not an appealing physique, in my opinion. So what do you guys think? Do you think naturals should be imitating what the enhanced bodybuilders are doing? Or should it be just two completely separate sports where, you know, one are chasing the shreds and the size at the same time, and the other, maybe they push more towards size where they do get a lean physique on stage. You know, maybe they do show up around 10%. I'm not saying we need to show up fat or, you know, 20% body fat. Get lean, get down to 10%, maybe get down to 9% and look good and show off your muscles, but don't like make yourself look like you just, you know, escaped out of a concentration camp. It's not a good look. So yeah, I think that turned into a little bit of a rant, but I hope that made sense, and I will see you guys next time.